Vesper's Host, arguably Destiny 2's hardest solo dungeon experience. But what if I told you that the dungeon isn't actually that hard? For those that don't know me, hi, my name is Pink. I'm going to change the way you look at Vesper's Host forever. So grab a snack whilst I break down over 250 hours of Vesper's knowledge in the ultimate solo guide. Welcome to Vesper Station. To make this guide easier to follow, I'm breaking it up into 6 distinct sections, and breaking down each one in a level of detail that even if you have never touched this dungeon before, you would be able to understand it fully. Upon spawning in, you will notice the large emptiness of space, and a path on the right leading into the cargo bay of the station. The room is set up as follows. One large main square room with boxes, pillars, and stairs, a locked door at the back of the room, and 2 side rooms. This is where we get introduced to our first and main mechanic, scanning and operating. There are 5 distinct panels scattered around the bay, 1 on each side of the bay, 1 by the exit, and 2 in the center, 1 on the pillar and 1 on the roof. The goal is to activate 4 of these panels to open the door. To do this, you must use the scanner buff, which by default is the yellow buff, to identify the correct panels, and then use the operator buff, which by default is the red buff, to shoot those 4 healthy panels. That's the basic explanation, but let me explain it with a little more detail. On approach to the bay, 2 waves of adds will spawn split between the side rooms. The first, 10 red bar marauders, the second, 10 orange bar marauders. After spawning, they will teleport and scatter around the bay. If you are fast enough, you can actually see them spawning and teleporting out of the rooms. Or you can just kill them as they spawn, as you need to clear out both waves before the viral carriers, the enemies carrying the buffs, spawn. These 2 will spawn in either room, meaning that if you're quick enough, you don't have to go hunt them down. Picking up scanner first, you will see 5 yellow markers on your minimap. These are unscanned panels. They will make an irritating constant tone when close by, and will make a high-pitched ping if this is the correct panel and turn white on the minimap. That's important if you happen to run past it without checking or forgetting. If the panel is incorrect, the tone of the panel will be a low-pitched power down noise, and the panel will disappear. For the opening, you just need to scan panels until you find the bad one or find 4 good ones. As there is only 1 bad one out of the 5, it's a process of elimination. Be quick, though, as each buff has a timer, which you can refresh by swapping or interacting with the showers in the corners at the back of the room. Once the doors open, there will be also a shield that removes any buffs, so you don't have to worry about dunking the last one, just go through the door. Once through the airlock, follow the route I take to get to the first encounter. Oh, and as a quick side note, don't worry about the trip mines unless you're standing still or running behind someone. You can just run through them without dying, and the only one I recommend shooting is the one at the top of the jump down to the encounter. If you think that was a lot of information, don't worry, it's about to get a lot worse. Going back to the start, there's an alternative route you can take to skip all mechanics. I'm doing this on Hunter, but this can also be done on Warlock. Sorry Titan's gonna have to go the boring route. To pull this off, you're going to need the following setup. A finisher that has forward or backward movement. The best one for this is the boot to the head finisher. Blink and a stasis super needs to be equipped. This setup allows us to freeze and position an enemy next to the right side room, finishing to displace the player outside of the map, and then resetting our position by spamming blink. From there, you can eager edge up the side or ascension to get on the roof of the bay. From here, follow the route I take on screen, watching out for the pushback barrier, and then drop down to the first encounter. Now that we've successfully made it to the first encounter, we're going to start to build on the basics from what we learnt in the opening. This encounter revolves around clearing adds with an increased emphasis on prioritization and identifying what's important and what can be ignored. But before we do any scanning or operating, let's look at the layout of the arena as well as any objectives and their progression conditions. The arena is set up as follows. A large middle room with a large ball in the back middle used to start the encounter, behind it 3 boxes, and on the side 4 paths that branch off from the middle room, of which 1, the top right room, is sealed and our exit out of the encounter. The branches are labelled as follows: Yellow Brain, Blue Lungs, and Red Heart. The objective is simple: power up the station by depositing 3 nuclear cores in the aforementioned boxes at the back of the arena. To do this, we must scan and operate in the rooms at the end of each branch and carry the nuke back into middle. Like the opening, we must first procure our buffs, and they have a set spawning condition. Upon starting the encounter, a mini-boss Brig will spawn behind you. Killing him spawns a wave, including the Scanner Vandal. However, you will quickly notice that there are no stations to deposit the buff, meaning you have 60 seconds to go find one. Choosing one of the 3 open branches, you must make it to the end and deactivate the shield to be able to access the terminals to deposit and prevent yourself from dying. This is pretty simple to do. On the way to the end, you will face 10 major dregs and 2 mini-boss vandals. All 12 enemies have to die, so the shield lowers. After lowering the shield and you enter the room, you will be faced with 2 more mini-boss vandals and an infinitely spawning wave of shanks. Killing the mini-bosses, the Operator Vandal will spawn, and this is the only time you will need to collect the buffs, as you can just deposit them and collect them in the other rooms later. After collecting the buffs, you can scan the room for the correct panels. There will always be 4 correct panels and 2 incorrect panels. Shooting the 4 correct ones spawns the nuke, as well as enemies to block you on your way back to the middle room. This includes 3 Duskfield Shanks to slow and freeze you, and 2 mini-boss vandals. At any point, you can change your weapons to drop the nuke and kill them, as you have reduced mobility whilst carrying the nuke, not being able to use your jump ability, nor will you be able to use any other abilities or your weapons. Another thing worth mentioning at this point is you will gain the debuff Radiation about every 1.5 to 2 seconds, and if you ever reach ×10 stacks, you will die immediately. Take your time and carefully jump back to middle, dropping the nuke whenever you reach 7 or 8 stacks. Be careful, however, when and where you drop the nuke, as it can roll off slopes or fall down holes. When you reach the middle, there will be another mini-boss Brig that has put up shields over the boxes where you have to dunk. You have to drop the nuke and kill him. You have to be quick, as there is a timer on the nuke that counts down when it is not being held by the player. You have a total of 60 seconds of time that the nuke can be dropped before it explodes. Once the Brig is down, the shield lowers and you can dunk it. Repeat this 2 more times to complete the encounter. With the basics of the encounter covered, let's talk about making this encounter go smoothly. First, let's tackle some of the areas that progress the encounter. The mini-boss vandals in each of the branches need to die, and they need to die relatively fast, as they do the most damage, as well as they block your way forwards. Mint Retrograde is one of the best options for this. It barely limits your loadout choice and kills within 3 bursts depending on how accurate you are. Other noteworthy options are Parasite, Ionic Sentry on Warlock, Mini Hammers with Worm Guards on Titan, and Tempest Strike and Combination Blow on Hunter, killing them within usually 1 to 2 shots. Another thing to discuss is the order that you do the rooms in. I haven't mentioned this up to now, but the 3rd and final Brig defending the boxes is larger and has more health, and the different branch layouts mean that there are different distances that you have to carry the nuke back into middle. The red room has the shortest distance, meaning you are the quickest out of that room, and you have more time to focus on the boss. This means your first 2 rooms should either be brain or lungs. And my personal rotation for this is brain, lungs, and then finally heart. Having already mentioned some things that work well in this encounter, let's finally talk about builds. The important thing is that you have a build that you are comfortable with, that you know how to use, and has good survivability with also having good burst damage. Here are some that I found that make this encounter very, very simple. On Warlock, Geomags with 4-piece Lumia Potent and Delicate Tomb on a pure arc setup with Ionic Sentry is probably my favourite. Infinite Super, Bolt Charge, Blind as well as Amplify just make this trivial. easy survivability and a guaranteed super for each brig that just get melted by the super. Alternatively, the Getaway Buddy build on Prismatic kills ads whilst you worry about mechanics, keeping your health up with Devour. Void with Devour is my third option. This can either be with Controverse Hold or Nothing Manacles, doing a lot of burst ability damage and keeping you alive with Devour. On Titan, mini throwing hammers with Worm Gods is the classic bonk build, and it one-shots most enemies and lets you easily deal with the brigs whilst not losing any survivability, as the hammers and the healing grenades keep your health topped up. Prismatic Titan with Consecration and Knockout is also a good choice here, as it does everything that Solar does, but gives you a good burst option in the form of Thunder Crash. Finally, my personal favourite is Stasis Titan with Syntheticeps and the 4-piece Cosmodrome set. Healing, damage reduction, and an ungodly amount of burst damage, it's arguably the best build I've tried for this. Finally, Hunters. Gifted Conviction with Tempest Strike and Combination Blow is very potent, as the high melee burst damage can easily take care of mini-bosses and brigs, and the healing from the melee covers your survivability. Alternatively, on Prismatic Hunter, with Fortune's Favor or Coil Arachne, you can loop abilities to take aggro off yourself and have good ad control. Lacking a little in the damage department, however, your choice in weapon is very important. For this, I recommend Parasite and Mint, as they do very good burst damage. Finally, Stasis Hunter with the Grasp 4-piece basically lives the same fantasy as Stasis Titan, just with added mobility. Killing the final brig and then going to deposit the last nuke, go to collect your loot, and congratulations as you've completed the first encounter.
Vesper station.
Before we continue, I quickly want to rewind to the beginning of the first encounter. I mentioned earlier that to complete the encounter you must deposit 3 nukes. The game, however, does not distinguish between where the nukes were dunked, just that they were dunked. This lets us skip the entirety of the first encounter on Hunter. To do so, cap your frames to 30, rally on Storm's Edge, and follow the route on screen. After making this last jump to the ledge, this is where the skip happens. Slide up the right slope, and to wedge yourself underneath the floor, look to the pillar and up at about 30-degree angle. Constantly holding your backwards movement key and super, this clips your player model into the ground and gives you enough space for your super to go through the floor. With a valid teleport space on the other side, you will teleport through the floor and you're on the other side of the locked door. The rest of the skip is dunking the first 3 nukes of the aforementioned maze section to complete the encounter. Just note that you do have to backtrack after the 3rd dunk to hit an invisible checkpoint at the beginning of the maze. Starting the voice line means that you've hit it. The rest of this clip is just sped up footage and me going all the way back to the first encounter to show that it has actually dropped loot. Having already touched on it, let's go over the transition from first to second encounter, the maze. For this, just follow the route on screen for an easy route. The goal is to open 2 doors all powered by nuclear cores, whilst avoiding the servant boss trying to kill you. The first door needs 3 dunks, whilst the other one takes 2 dunks for a total of 5. Whilst you run around, however, you will notice a lot of smaller locked doors and a buff called Power Reserves. Power Reserves is essentially a currency allowing you to open the doors at the cost of a 1 reserve. Closing the doors or deactivating shields around the map gives you 1 reserve back. You need to juggle them whilst you carry and dunk the nukes. Speaking of the nukes, where do you even get them? They're dropped by captains that spawn within the maze. All bar 1 captain spawn in set locations, usually directly next to the last dunk or on the way to the next one. The 3rd captain, however, is the only one that won't do this, and his spawn is sadly random, but this isn't too much of an issue though. The captains will always try and run away from the player, and if they manage to escape from you, they will always teleport and head to the 3rd dunk location, so if you can't find him, he will be there. In the corridor, whilst moving between the rooms, there will be a servitor boss that will try and kill you with either bombs, melee attacks, or integration. Bombs can be easily countered by just waiting for them to explode or shooting them with a weapon. To not die from integration, you have to break line of sight of the boss, and melee attacks you just need to not get close. On top of that, he will also teleport to very inconvenient places. However, just moving to a different section of the maze, he will teleport to you, giving you a couple seconds of extra breathing room. During this entire section, Speed Booster is your best friend, allowing you to run past most things, and even lets you carry the final nuke all the way from the 4th dunk to the 5th dunk without dropping it once. The easiest way to get this is through Amplified or the 2-piece base Kevlar set. After dunking the final core and opening the last door, you can follow a very linear path to the 2nd encounter. There is a skip you can do on Hunter and Warlock, as it uses the same setup as the skip in the opening section. However, I would not recommend you try this on a flawless run, as you need to die to get the last airlock door to open, as you are desynchronized from leaving the maze load zone with power reserves. The same servitor boss has followed us from the maze to this next encounter, and will be the first boss we fight. This encounter comes across as overwhelming and complicated, but it follows a very simple linear mechanic, and the ads aren't a big issue. After rallying, you will walk forward until the encounter starts. From here, a wave of ads will spawn from the back of the room. Killing this entire wave of ads will spawn the next wave, which includes captains. Killing the majority of the wave, mainly the captains, spawns a third wave of ads, which includes 5 marauders, whose spawns are split up, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and 1 in the middle. But why am I putting so much focus on the marauders? That is because these are the spawn condition for the mini-boss that progresses the encounter. Killing all 5 marauders spawns a mini-boss called the Machine Priest. Killing the Machine Priest makes the boss summon you to his top platform with a large group of shanks. Whilst up top, your priority is to kill the exploder shanks first, as they will one-shot you if you get too close. The boss will launch the same attacks as in the maze, so play around cover. After killing everything, a viral shank with a new buff will spawn to the left of the boss. This is our introduction to the Suppressor. Suppressor replaces your grenade with a clone ability that takes aggro away from you. The clone has health and on its death explodes, and if the servitor boss is close by, it will fall apart into 9 smaller servitors. These servitors are all named with the name ending in a number, and this is important for the later mechanic. Among the 9 servitors will be 2 servitors with a glow and a binary code where its eye is. These are the servitors we want to focus on and write down the number from the back of their name, before jumping back down to the arena below. We do this loop a total of 2 times to give us a set of 4 unique numbers, a code. The observant have noticed the numbered panels in the front of the room where we entered. It is at this point we want to grab the operator and shoot the code we got upstairs. Upon shooting the last number, you want to quickly dunk operator as the boss teleports down and summons a suppressor. Pick up the suppressor buff, place a clone down, and shoot it for the boss to crumble into its smaller versions, and allowing you to do damage. The damage phase officially starts when he comes down, but he has 90% damage reduction in his large form, and if not broken in 15 seconds, he will teleport back up and the phase is over. Breaking him lets you do 15 seconds of actual damage to him before he reforms and goes back up, and you just repeat this until he's dead. With that rather lengthy explanation, we've covered the basic, and it's time to talk about making this encounter easier before we talk about damage. The mechanic phase revolves around killing ads and doing it fast. Area of effect abilities and the Gallahorn exotic are the best, clearing waves in 2 shots and having good ammo economy with 200 weapons. Min is a good secondary to deal with the Machine Priests. Upstairs, Galley will kill everything in 2 shots before it has a chance to get close, and the 4-piece Cosmodrome set will further boost your ad clear power as all the shanks are mages and will detonate on death. Shooting the suppressor clone lets you instantly crumble the boss and not having to wait for it to detonate. Once the boss is split, you can aim down sights with your weapon to look at the boss's name without having to get close to them. With all that mentioned, let's move on to damage. Before we talk build, let's talk about the boss itself. The boss splits into 7 when damage starts, and usually when you're dealing with a split boss, you're dealing with a proxy, or in other words, multiple models that you can damage that then transfer the damage to a separate enemy outside of the map that contains the boss health. This isn't an ideal boss to face, as you never do direct damage to the boss, meaning surges, debuffs, and weapon perks don't work. Thankfully, Raneiks isn't a proxy boss, and each servitor has a separate health pool that gets updated when the boss recombines. This is advantageous as you can do traditional damage strats and try and hit as many servitors as you can to maximize your damage. The boss, because of this, has effectively only 106,000 health, roughly the same as the Grasp of Avarice boss for Razia. And at 15 seconds we're looking at around 7,000 DPS to 1 phase, or 3,500 for a 2 phase, which is very doable. Having done over 11 hours of testing on 3 different characters, here is what I found. On Warlock, I wanted to test Ignitions with Solar Fulmination, Ember of Char, and Ashes, and on its own it did better than expected, with a type doable 2 phase, if you remember to refresh the debuff. On top of that, I tested the Waveframe GLs with the Ignitions to see if I could get even more. I did mess up the beginning with the GLs, but it doesn't seem to matter as the results would have been the same, if not worse. Not to mention you have to limit your mechanical loadout with a worse weapon. Finally on Solar, I tested Celestial Fire, and it's not worth using. Barely doing half, but infinitely more annoying to set up, If you want to do solar, just use Dawn Chorus, Snap, and Tractor Cannon. After solar, I tested arc, as it's a popular option I've seen. On my first test I got half health, which isn't bad at all. I repeated the test like the others, and this is where I noticed why I wouldn't recommend this. I got very lucky on my first round, but the second they split awfully, limiting my damage. I ended up only doing half the damage on my second go than I did in the previous phases. Doing similar damage to solar but being less consistent, I wouldn't recommend it sadly. Finally I tested Prismatic, choosing to go all in on damage and using Truth. With no survivability apart from orbs or heal clip, you have to play very carefully, and with a limited loadout choice it can be tough to get through mechanics. Over 9 tests, 2 times I died as the boss teleported in front of me, 6 of the attempts I was able to hit anywhere between 85 and 90% of its health, and my last attempt I managed to hit a 1 phase. This method requires a lot of setup and lacks meaningful survivability, and is only good if you get lucky and the boss health updates, realizing it is too low and splits back down into an infinite final stand. Moving over to Titan, I first tested Stasis, as it is again a very popular choice. Testing many combinations of damage, whether at the bottom or the top of the stairs, as well as whether light attacks or heavy attacks, I found that the best combination was just to spam heavy attacks from the bottom of the stairs and have the servitors move back into the crystals, resulting into an easy and consistent 2-phase. I also tried the spin to win exotic Hallowfire Heart with Burning Maw. I did this more of a meme, but it ended up being way better than expected, also being able to 2-phase the boss. Next, I went into weapon damage, using Bubble to trap the boss, and then using Hazardous Propulsion to give me an empowering buff for Truth. This ended up being anywhere between 2 and 4 phases, with a lot of setup, and is ultimately not worth it. Finally, I tested Prismatic, as it was able to secure one phases on the other classes. Sadly, Titan just lacks the elements that make it work on Warlock or on Hunter. With the long super animation and poor weaken and radiant uptime, sadly this just caps out at 85%, with a lot of setup, and is ultimately not worth it. The best option on Titan is probably Stasis, as it does well in the mechanics and it doesn't really lack anything in damage, as it is a very consistent 2-phase and that is probably the minimum you have to do. Hunters are up next, and I initially didn't know what I wanted to test, as I already knew what the best option was for this, as I had done prior runs on Hunter. I asked my friends what they wanted me to test, and here are the results. Up first, Storm's Edge with Staritus Scales, and Foe Tracer on the class item with an Arc Rocket. Trying to hit multiple servitors with the spin after you teleport, it just sadly doesn't do enough damage, resulting in a tight 4-phase. Gathering Storm with Truth is up next. This is an easy 3-phase with Truth carrying most of the damage despite no Radiant or Weaken. Last one I tested for them was Blade Barrage with Shards of Galnor, and then swapping to Speedload of Slacks to try and build another super in the 15 seconds. You won't get another super, but you will 2-phase, and it was a lot of fun, but it also required a lot more effort than the rest. Finally, I tested the best loadout for Raneiks. I mentioned earlier that this boss isn't a proxy boss. This means you can individually damage the servitors. On top of that, Tether shares the damage to any tethered enemies, meaning you can get double the hits from one rocket. Placing the super at the top of the stairs means that all of them are tethered for the entire phase, and whereas with Warlock you need to use all your ammo and more to get a 1-phase, you're killing before you even run out of truth ammo. For this to be effective though, you need the 4-piece Vault of Glass set to keep up orbs, or go into damage with at least 5 armor charge. Having taken down Raneiks, it's time to take a spacewalk to final. I'm starting this section from a checkpoint, but to reach where I am, you just need to jump up to the top platform and jump across to the door in the back. From here we can drop down into space and jump across the debris. On the platform in front are 3 snipers. If possible, you want to kill them before making your approach. They do just enough damage to pose a problem when you're near to the end. Following the route I take around the building, it's at this point we need to talk about the lightning. A lot of people hate this dungeon for this one mechanic alone. I don't blame them. If you get hit, it's a one-shot. However, the lightning is also easy to navigate around. Lightning has a spawn animation, and as long as you see the yellow hue and the sparkles, it's safe to go through. The only time it does damage is if the flash hits the ground. And it also leaves a weak damaging pool. Lightning does damage on the ground level, meaning that small jumps as the lightning hits make you dramatically take less damage. You should still not be reckless. Take enough time to predict when it will strike, but don't hesitate, stopping might cost you a run. Once you're in the building, I like to kill all the adds, as you're going to need some ammo, but before we can use it we have to navigate the mines. This is really easy, just run. Unless you stop or get caught on something, your movement speed is enough to mean you're out of range of the explosion. The only time you have to worry about a trip mine is if the laser is pointing in the direction you're going to run. Passing through the mines gets you to a room with a mini-boss. Kill him to lower the shield and you're at the last parkour section. Following the route on screen, try to avoid as many of the lightning strikes as you can. After this, it's just a quick linear path up to the final arena. Shooting the boss opens the hatch and it's your final drop to the final encounter.
Stay back! That exoframe is the center of the corruption.
This transition can be annoying, but there is a skip. Using movement tools like micro-missile grenade launchers like Mountaintop and an Eager Edge sword can save you having to worry about dangerous sections, like the lightning. On top of this, you can skip the trip mines as well as the mini-boss. Another benefit of skipping those will be that there will be no lightning spawning in the last parkour section, meaning there's no threat at all. To do this skip, we're going to make it all the way over to the building. However, instead of going inside, we're going to slip through the crack in the wall and jump around the corner and up onto the roof of the corridor. From here, we can just run across the rooms and make it to the last room with the mini-boss. Going to the top left corner, we're going to hug the wall and jump up onto the beam. You need to hug the wall here or you will die to the death barrier. From here, we can cross the beam, pull out our Eager Edge sword, and swing as we drop off the beam. This will slingshot us out into the parkour section, and from here, the rest of the transition is normal. Welcome to the final boss, and the only thing standing in your way for the solo. This encounter builds on everything that we have covered up to now. We once again have Suppressor, Operator, and Scanner, and the arena is set up as follows. We have a middle room with multiple pillars and the boss in the back middle, and 3 terminals of different colors and 4 elevator chutes to the lower level. After starting, the boss will spawn 2 clones with radiation shields. These cannot be damaged until their shield is stripped off them, and you gain radiation and an increased rate lost inside the shield. To deal with them, you must place a suppressor clone and break it when they're nearby to remove the shield. Killing the first 2 clones spawns the scanner. After the scanner spawns, the boss will spawn 2 more clones. Killing the second set of clones will spawn the operator. After this, you don't need suppressor, unless you lose one of the buffs. At this point, I like to despawn suppressor by hugging the corner of the elevator at the back of the hallway. Alternatively, you can dunk it in the white terminal. After all clones are dealt with, kill scanner and scan the 4 number pillars around the room to find the number of the panels you have to shoot. You can then go dunk scanner on red. Picking up op, you must now shoot the 4 panels of the number you've just scanned, and then you can dunk op on blue. Once all the panels are shot upstairs, the boss will teleport downstairs either to the left or right room. You can actually see him do this. If you missed it, lights will flash on the side that the boss is at. Of the 2 rooms, the right room is easier than the left, with the terminals containing the buff being stacked over each other, and the colour that you dunked on doesn't make a difference. However, the right room is way harder. The terminals are spread out. With op on blue, it is in line of sight of the boss, which means you can abuse the fact that the boss stops shooting to summon clones to deposit safely. This is the only point in the room where the boss won't shoot you. Scanner on red is also a safer spot with more cover. Placing the buffs in these terminals increase my survivability by 80%, only dying if I'm being AFK to reply to someone during testing. Now that we know why we use these terminals, let's break down each room. Upon entering the room, you're going to pick up operator, avoiding any radiation clones, and shooting 4 panels. After shooting the last panel, you can put operator back. The boss will spawn 4 clones, and you have to scan the correct one as that one drops the nuke. Put scanner back, grab the nuke, and run to the middle room, which is the safe room, to deposit the nuke. If this is your second room, don't worry about putting scanner back, just worry about dunking and dunking fast. Go as quickly as you can, as you have limited time after shooting the last panel. You have 40 seconds to dunk or you die. But don't worry, 40 seconds is a long time. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Going over to the other side, let me quickly explain how to deal with the radiation clones. They're annoying, but they have one flaw: they don't jump. You can kite them around the room by changing elevation or standing in areas with no stair access. They will no longer be able to get to you, or they have to take the long way around so that you can lose some radiation. After the room is clear, you'll have to navigate a corridor of trip mines to make it to the other side. Again, don't worry, as there's only one trip mine that can kill you, and that's right at the beginning, so jump over it and then just continue running. Make your way out of the room, following the path to the middle, and take the teleporter up, where you can stand in the elevator that you came out of and get shot up into the damage area. Let me quickly explain the boss to you before we talk loadouts, as damage immediately starts as you get shot up. The Puppeteer is a traditional boss with a lot of health, 325,000 to be exact, but to compensate you have a total of 95 seconds to do damage, so you have to hit 3.5k, the same as a Raneiks 2-phase to 1-phase Puppeteer. This is very much a total damage issue rather than a DPS one. On top of that, survivability matters too. The boss shoots you, summons clones, and there's no cover, and lightning constantly tries to strike you. You want to be in the air as much as possible, or constantly on the move whenever you see the queue of lightning about to strike where you are. The boss will teleport between platforms every 20 seconds, and after the third one, spawn a shiny clone holding a nuke, and will go immune as it summons the anomaly. Killing the shiny guy to grab his nuke, and going to the safe room, watching out for any lightning, you can deposit the nuke and extend damage by a further 35 seconds. After that damage phase is over, you must go back to the elevator and drop down to do the next phase. Let's finally go over some damage testing for this boss. Starting with Warlock, I am using almost the same truth setup as at Raneiks. I'm going to the front left and climbing on the wall of the safe room and using a Rift and Devour to survive. This spot is very powerful as no lightning can hit you here and you just have to survive the boss, which is easily doable in a Rift. Truth sadly lacks total damage, but it is a really easy 2-phase as long as you don't accidentally blow yourself up when setting it up. Next up, I tested Dawn Chorus with 1k, and it just sucks all around. Being able to get 3 phases as long as you have Particle and the Catalyst, and enough ammo dropping around. After 1k, I went on to Arc, but not loading in on the usual Chaos Reach build. Everyone usually uses Weaken Clear to get a 15% debuff with Anarchy. However, I chose to run Limit Break on the Tablet of Ruin for a 15% buff instead, as it also allowed me to run Elemental Supercharger, allowing me 3 supers in one phase. If you're good about your Anarchy placements, it's also a pretty good 2 phase. Having seen a Warlock 1 phase in my recommended, I wanted to test the core part of that Celestial Fire build. You have to get a finisher through the teleporter and make your way up the elevator fast, refreshing it on the spawned clones to the left and the right. The super itself didn't do too bad, leading to a 2 or 3 phase. You can then pad it out with a total of 4 other damage loadouts, but I don't think that's worth the stress. Titans didn't do too good against this boss, but not terribly either. First I tested Solar Titan, specifically Hammer of Soul with Hallowfire Heart in 1k. It wasn't great, but will get you an easy 3 phase. After using Solar Titan, I went over to Prismatic Titan with Truth, but it did so poorly that I don't even have any footage worth showing. So I decided to go to the old Bolt Charge meta, and it didn't do too bad at all, getting you an easy 4-phase with using Symmetry alone. Taking this Bolt Charge idea further, using 1k and then swapping to Symmetry is also very good, netting you a 2-phase. The only funny thing being with this is Symmetry kind of out DPSing 1k. On Hunter, I only tested 2 loadouts, because everything else had little to no survivability, and both had been used to 1-phase this boss before. That being said, I did not expect to 1-phase this boss when testing these loadouts, as they required a lot of time to learn. That being said, the first one was Blade Barrage spamming Shards of Galnor, and then using Dynamo and Speedloader slacks to generate another super. This was very hard with a lot of loadout swapping and a lot of blind jumps. Not to mention, to 1-phase, you need to hit a super every 15 seconds. If you're to use this, expect a 2 to 3 phase until you get better at using it. After that, I tried a much easier loadout to use, Anarchy and the Bolted Glass Shotgun. This is good as you're out of the way of the lightning with Ascension and you have good healing with Restoration and any orbs you pick up. It has respectable damage, being a guaranteed safe 2-phase, if not a 1-phase. I really like this loadout and probably will go for a 1-phase with it, and the only thing stopping me during my testing was ammo. You need about 3 to 4 bricks during damage to have enough to kill, which unless you prep it is unlikely. Ultimately, it was a lot easier to use and in my limited testing, and I had a lot more fun with it too. With that, we have now come to the end of Vesper's Host. I do hope you enjoyed the guide, and let me know which dungeon you'd like to see next, as I do want to do ones for the other ones as well. I'll try to answer any questions you may have, and until next time.
Motherfucker.